Hey friends, hope you're doing well. It is just before a long weekend here, so it's a quiet day, and I'm going on my lunchtime walk as I normally do. And I want to talk to you about why I think that nature needs to be a regular part of every child's education. And by nature, I mean time in the outdoors that's not in a fenced in, highly monitored area. So children should be free to explore the nature around them. And I'm going to get into what I think nature means for people in cities. It's not that different from people who live in rural areas or the middle of nowhere. So, um, let me tell you about the week that we just had with my daughter, and it's a fairly ordinary week in terms of what we did outdoors. We get outdoors. Her and my wife get outdoors for hours every day. They're really good at it. Her and I usually go out in the evening, and we have a river near where we live. We live in the middle of a city, but we have a river near where we live, and her and I often go for walks along the river. And what we saw this week, I wrote it all down. I shocked myself reading my own list. And again, this isn't an unusual week necessarily, although there's a lot of birds migrating right now. So I suppose that helps with the biodiversity that we're seeing. But this weekend, I'm going to miss a few things here. We saw, for the first time ever, a common egret. And again, I think that they're migrating. So that was really cool. We saw many blue herons. We saw kingfisher, mink, beavers, mergansers. A red-tailed hawk swooped down in front of us and picked up a fish out of the river that my daughter was throwing sticks into. We saw minnows, other types of larger fish. I know there's steelhead trout, but I didn't see any steelhead trout necessarily this week. At least I don't think I did. Um, Mice, lots of outdoor cats. There's a lot of flora that we saw as well. So different types of wildflowers and plants that are blooming spectacularly this time of year as we head into fall. It's September 1st today when I'm filming this. And on and on and on. So many things. We had a run-in with a raspberry bush that I mistook for poison ivy. And then I looked it up afterwards. I felt silly that I mistook it. And I looked it up afterward, and they're actually quite similar. Raspberry bushes have very jagged edges and look identical to poison ivy. But poison ivy, the edges of the leaf are very smooth. Anyhow, that's the week that we had. Yes, a little bit more biodiversity, like I said, than usual, but not out of the ordinary. And again, we live in a city, okay? In the middle of that city, not even like on the outskirts. And so in just a week, imagine doing this for 52 weeks a year over the first 18 years of your life, what you're going to see and experience and learn about. In just a week, my daughter, 2 and a bit years old, got many textbooks worth of education. And she learned so much about the environment, the nature, the biodiversity that lives right outside her front door. And had intimate experiences with all of it. And it's so cool because, and here's my message to people that do live in cities, like even really, really, really big cities like New York or Chicago or Toronto or LA. We often think of nature as being something that happens elsewhere. You know, nature's Yosemite National Park or Banff. And nature's certainly those things. It's so obvious that it's those things. But nature exists everywhere. You know, before I made this video, I actually did a Google search, wildlife in New York City. You know, there's black bears in New York City. There's seals. Imagine that. Seals. I mean, obviously along the water, I'm sure you can see that. Coyotes, deer, snakes, you name it. Bald eagles, rats, mice. So much wildlife in the middle of New York City. It's amazing. Nature is right outside your door no matter where you live. And if you're looking around, you're thinking, how can we get more nature? That's the right question that I think somebody in the city should be asking themselves. Like, how do we make this more abundant, more green, more places where these animals can live and this flora can flourish? How do we do that? These are good questions to ask yourself. But nature and getting out in nature and immersing yourself in the wild world that lives around you isn't something that you need to go anywhere to do. Does it hurt to go to national parks? No, of course not. It's a totally different experience, and everyone should experience that. Everyone should have the opportunity to experience something like that. But is it needed? Not necessarily. Other perspectives are needed, sure. But I'm talking about for a kid, for a child, something that's like newborn to 18 years old. They don't have to go anywhere, and they don't have the access to a lot of these things too, right? Because they can't drive, and they're kind of stuck wherever it is immediately that they live. Stuck is probably the wrong word to use, but they're limited in their choices. But that's okay, because nature happens all around them. And it's one thing to read about these things in a book. And that's how our over-credentialed academic society thinks, right? They think in terms of degrees, books read, certifications, etc. When I would argue that is just a few parts of the puzzle, and that their value, their worth, is shrinking. And what more people are demanding, and what more people want, especially as we become more sedentary and disconnected from the world around us, is the opportunity to get out into nature and experience it firsthand. Touch the plants, see the animals interact with one another, see the circle of life. Sorry, speaking of nature, there's a lot of mosquitoes and like flies around me that are nipping at my head here. This is what you get when you go outside. Maybe not the best advert for it, but hey, it is what it is. And it makes you happier being outside. And we can get into that whole conversation. Like, there are academic arguments that I can be making here, and I'm not doing that because, I'll do it in another video, sure. But I don't think that that's needed right now. I think that people just need to understand two things. That kids need it because it's good for them, and it makes them more in tune with the world around them and better understand what lives right outside their door, which I think is important. And secondly, nature is right outside your door. It's not somewhere else. It's other places too, but it's certainly outside your door. So immerse yourself and allow your children to immerse themselves in it. I really do think that part of every curriculum in every school, public, private, Catholic, whatever, ought to incorporate nature as a part of the regular curriculum. Mostly unsupervised time in the world around them. And kids will learn so much and become so fascinated by what it is that's around them. And at the very least, they'll feel like they're more in tune and more aware of their surroundings. So many other things are going to happen too. Their vitamin D levels are going to rise. Their ability to control their body is also going to improve. Like, you don't have to be a kid to have a temptation to hang off of branches and climb trees. Even adults want to do that, but kids really want to do that. And teaches them such wonderful command of their body, and allows them to become familiar with different types of trees and what lives in those trees and which ones are easier to climb and all that stuff. So it's making them, physical beings. And it's also, again, letting them learn about the world that they live amongst. So that's where I'm going to end this video. If you have the ability to spend even 15, 20, 30 minutes a day with your child just walking outside your front door and taking a tally of what lives around you and what within a few block radius you can go and explore, Do it. Do it. Download it. Here's a couple of apps for you that you might enjoy. There's an app called Merlin, and Merlin allows you to, it's just like a recorder app, so you can record what's going on around you, and it will let you know which birds are in your proximity, which birds it can hear based off of the chirping that's happening. So if you ever hear some chirping, singing from birds, you're like, I wonder what that is. Download Merlin. It'll tell you that. iNaturalist, or sorry, Seek is an app by iNaturalist, and Seek will allow you to scan a plant with your cell phone camera, and it'll tell you what that plant is. So that's actually how I figured out that we weren't stepping and touching poison ivy. We were in a raspberry bush. I use that app, but it also allows you to identify different flowers and all that good stuff. And it'll actually tell you, if what you're identifying might be invasive, and should you report it. So that's kind of cool too. You get to learn about what's native and invasive species, what grows at what time of year, what has fragrance, what doesn't, all those cool things, like what's a pollinator, what's not. So Merlin and Seek are two great apps to start with that will allow you to become more immersed in your surroundings and more appreciative of the wildlife that exists around you and the nature that exists around you. There's a couple others, but I'm forgetting their names right now. So start there. Maybe I'll do another video on some of those apps that you should download. Okay, hope that was helpful. Please do get outside with your children. Even if you're just watching them from a distance, allow them to walk, run, jump, and explore the world that they live in. Take care, guys. Have a wonderful day.